one of the most important elements in this war in Ukraine is the financial support from the West. We know right now in the United States, the Republicans are not willing to send more funds and money to Ukraine. How do you see the situation right now in the United States? Is the Biden administration finally going to get the fund that they need to send to Ukraine?
It's difficult to say, and I'm certainly not in any way insider. In fact, I try to stay as far away as possible from those Washington squabbles, and But the point is, it doesn't matter even if they pass it. As Dmitry, with your interview with Dmitry, he stated it's laundromat, the Ukraine, and so we have now the irreconcilable situation between Republicans and, of course, Democratic Party and the Biden administration. So I don't know how it will proceed. It doesn't look like they will get this financing because United States now has on its hands the basically crimes against humanity, wholesale crimes against humanity by Israel in Gaza. So they need to finance that. Last time I heard, and this is from Russian specialists, professionals, but I believe it's floated around in somewhere in the Western media, it's the fact that each day of the hostilities between Hamas, well, it's really not just hostilities, it's just basically, ethnic cleansing of Gaza. It costs about $300 million a day for Israel. And of course, Israel doesn't have this money. It is the United States which finances this. So it really won't make much difference if Ukraine gets it or not, because the militarily situation essentially is clear now. And after that, I don't know, it's up to Russia to decide what she wants to do with whatever will be left of Ukraine. So with financing or without financing. And if you look attentively at what West can provide, it cannot provide much anymore, except the last wish list I read yesterday, I believe. I laughed, really. Ukraine now wants THAAD, not that this is going to help them anyway. They want F-18s now. So, yeah, whatever. So, and yeah, it doesn't make any difference, really.
The change that is happening in Europe, do you think that the United States finally can get Europe to send more weapons, more money to Ukraine, or is not possible with the current situation that Europe is experiencing right now?
Well, even if you take the United States' biggest lapdog, people who completely sold their country for the United States and basically put it on a path of the eventual destruction, I mean, as the power it used to be, Germany. A Minister of Defense Pistorius yesterday, he stated openly that Germany is not ally of Ukraine and Germany cannot continue to do what it does. But you know what? And again, as I already stated, Europe has been called for what it is. And the bluff has been called. They don't have much they can share. I mean, UK and Germany might scrap the bottom of the barrel, send some missiles, maybe send some more, whatever they have in terms of the air defense, which is not effective anyway. So, but again, it doesn't change the overall state of the affairs. And we all know that the state of the affairs that using, I believe it's either Scott Ritter or Colonel McGregor. I don't remember who stated that it's a broken force. It cannot even resist anymore, per se. And so, yeah, they can throw in some more, whatever, let's say, another 30 Leopard tanks. What's going to happen to them? They will get burned in the couple of weeks. Abrams tanks already, United States wants them back because they don't want to risk the humiliation and reputational losses. So no matter what they do, they cannot outproduce Russia. And that was probably the most shocking for Europeans lesson. So you have now the new government in Netherlands. Holland hates Russian gods, but they don't want to any part with the war in Ukraine. So, and it's good enough, for example, for Russia. Nobody in Russia wants them to be liked by Western Europe. But the fact that they now begin to kind of fall off like all those layers of the rotten, bark tree. So yeah, that's pretty much where it's going. Another matter that if we look at it from the point of view of the long-term effect, I think so. Europe is already in the trap. United States literally owns those elites. And well, some people may come up with, as I already stated, those people who came in Netherlands against after Rutte's government, they might not want to participate, but in the end, they will do what United States tells them to do. And when you look at this whole situation, it is not about Europe. Europeans are completely dependent. They are not subjects of their foreign policy or geopolitics. They are objects. They are being used. So in the end, everything, all roads lead to Rome, as they say. All roads lead to Washington, D.C. And the only reason why Europeans begin to raise some, very not loudly voice of the protest is because they see what is happening in Washington, because it is all up to Washington. I do not view Europe as their subject. It doesn't have real subjectivity. If you look across European Union, it's completely corrupt organization. And in this particular case, that's why Russians do not want to talk to them. Russians are ready to talk to United States because this is the master.
In this war in Ukraine, one of the areas that the Russian military-industrial complex has advanced a lot, the area of drones. We had two drones that I heard of, these new Lancet, they called Product 53 and the no uranium. How do you see these two drones? What's the importance of this area for Russia?
Oh no, it's very important, but I do not want. We have to be very clear about it. Russia was into drone design and production since mid 2010s, big time. So if you look attentively at the long range and heavier load drones such as Orion, for example, they are full blown, competitors with which carry also the outstanding weapons. But the latest Lancet is the drone which is capable to operate in swarms, and essentially it's autonomous system. It has the multi-channel homing device, the head. So, and I believe it's infrared, it's optical, what have you. And so they can operate in swarms, which is the further development of the well, let's call it this way, net-centric warfare, although there are people who use this misnomer, artificial intelligence. It's not artificial intelligence, but it's definitely their ability to operate in swarms and make the targeting and target selection completely on their own. In other words, you can launch the latest drones and they will know who is the enemy. They will decide themselves which of the target they want to attack and how they will do the target distribution within the swarm or the group of the drones, whatever they 5, 6 drones or maybe more. Geranium, which is this is what is called. They continue to call it that they are, Iranian drones or anything. But I mean, it's from the get-go, it was just aerodynamic solution which looked similar to Iranian drones, but it's completely Russian guts in it, electronics and all. So yeah, they will continue to develop it, and it's kind of now the part of their tactical considerations, and it's already written in combat manuals, how to use drones on the tactical level. And of course, you can use them strategically if need be, depending on what kind of the impact or aims or the targets you pursue. And as we already saw, even the older versions of geranium, they could wreak havoc on centrals of the C4 command control communications and computers network of armed forces of Ukraine. So, and they could attack strategic targets. So there you go. It's normal evolutionary development, and Russia has all necessary know-how and technological and industrial base to continue to not only outproduce the combined West, but move beyond the what is known about drones today. That is why when you operate and you conduct operations of such immense scale, the largest operation since World War II in Europe, you get those immensely important data sets, which allow you to see them, to make a generalization and generalizations of the data, and to make conclusions and introduce the improvements on the engineering level to whatever the weapon system. It's not only just drones. Look at Russian air defense. It's just astonishing, So it's that's what a real war does to you.
When you look at the Ukrainian part, are they using the Turkish drones, the American drones? What type of drones they're using against Russians?
Well, they used in the beginning, they used the Bayraktar drones, which Turkey sold to them. Most of them have been shut down by Russians. After that, Turkey officially, you can find it in media, asked Ukraine not to use Bayraktars, because Bayraktars, people thought that when Azerbaijan won the war in Nagorno-Karabakh against Armenian forces there, that it was largely attributed to Bayraktars, which is not true, actually. It was the use of by Azerbaijani armed forces, extensive use of artillery and multiple launch rocket systems, which really turned the war around. But it looked nice, Bayraktars and all, but I mean they use some drones once in a while, and there's a lot of kind of cottage industry drones. They have workshops at the front lines. They do those small, whatever they call Mavic type drones. They stick their, some kind of the shell, the smaller caliber shell or grenades to them, and they fly them in. They do use some American drones. Which one, I don't know, but you have to keep in mind that United States, at least until very recently, was providing if need be, usually a review type level of their guide information, tactical and operational information to Ukraine. And when need be, it provided the targeting. I don't know how it's going now, but Russians evidently figured this out too, So, and suppression of those systems is evidently fairly successful. And that's it. I mean, they can produce some kind of as I already stated, tactical level drone, which can drop some shell or some grenade. I don't think so they have anymore the wherewithal to produce anything serious. And it was, again, as already stated, it was Turkish, which have been completely basically discredited in the real battlefield. And that's about it.
How do you see the area of electronic warfare? We know that this war is about United States and Russia. How do you see this fight of electronic warfare between Russia and the United States?
Let me put it politely, because first, electronic warfare is one of those highly, classified things. But let me put it this way. I did video a couple of days ago, specifically, even polls now, just, Polish politicians come out and say, well, Russians didn't even engage 15% of their military potential. I can tell you only one thing, which I know for sure. After that, it's just pure speculation. So you cannot quote me on that. It will be speculation. But what you can quote me on is the fact that Russians didn't even use 15% of their electronic warfare capabilities. And if Russia would go out and use whatever she has, the whole command and control system of NATO will be paralyzed. This is how much more advanced Russian electronic warfare is over anything that United States or whatever Europe can offer. And it's also because of war. War is always great engine of the progress, as sad as it sounds. But do not forget where we got, ultrasound for pregnant women, or ultrasound, where we got X-rays, where we got all of it from penicillin, all because of the wars. But in terms of electronic warfare, I know it's highly advanced in Russia, and even just to give you an example, this one was officially admitted. Russia has for example, Murmansk electronic warfare system, and it can shut down communications of the shortwave communications at a range of 5,000 kilometers. In other words, you can open, it's there, it it's not good news, okay, for NATO.
Stoltenberg, Secretary General of NATO, just recently said that Ukraine's situation is getting worse. It will worsen, and NATO needs to prepare for it. Here comes the question, what NATO can do about it? Just yesterday, Biden said we cannot let Russia win. When you put these two comments together, the first question goes to Ukrainians. Is Ukraine capable to continue this war? If not, what NATO can do about it?
Nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing. Mr. Biden, Mr. Austin was saying that, if, Russians win, well, Russians already won. Russians actually militarily won a long time ago. It was just a matter of how you kind of shape the geopolitical, state of the affairs, because obviously there's a lot of diplomacy and a lot of economics goes into it. But the point is that nothing they can do. I mean, Mr. Biden, who, I'm not even sure he knows where he is. I mean, okay. Mr. Austin, who is laughed at, by professionals, military professionals, and not only him, actually. Mr. Milley is a whole other story altogether. But do they want to deploy U.S. forces in Europe to fight Russians? Well, good luck with that. So it's just trying to manage or damage control, which is absolutely useless because the world saw everything they needed to see. The whole myth of Americans, military supremacy has been blown out of the water. I mean, it's not. I mean, and Europeans now, do you think so? They want to fight? No, they don't. Even Poles, who have been absolutely, whipped into this chauvinistic frenzy even half a year ago. My gosh, now suddenly they say, no, we just do not want to do those stupid things. So, and again, to fight with what? That's the whole point. There are no forces, for example, in the United States, which can reasonably, granted that they will be allowed to pre-deploy in Europe and supplied. There is no force the United States can gather, let alone provide them with appropriate hardware, which can go and reasonably, obtain some kind of positive result in Ukraine, whatever the positive means, So, do they want to start a draft in the United States? Well, good luck with that. Vietnam will be, stroll in the park compared to what's going to happen here. And again, the even parameters, the U.S. Army War College magazine, very popular publications. One of the last more or less professional publications on military. They stated a couple months ago, will the United States be able, in the case of this war, to sustain about 36 casualties a day? So, I mean, do these people even can wrap their brains around this number? So there you go. That's the answer. And then again, they don't even understand what, for example, the basically NATO really deciding, which is impossible. They physically don't have material. They don't have the personnel to do that. But if they will decide to join this fight, what's going to happen? I can tell you what's going to happen. United States will go towards nuclear threshold because it's going to sustain catastrophic defeat within a month, and it will see the level of attrition and, casualties which it never saw in its history, even in World War II. And what can I say? So good luck trying to do that. And of course, consolidation of Russian society in this case. Can you imagine now Russians are extremely patriotic people and they know what real war is. They can take losses. America cannot.
Do you see that type of psychology in the politicians of the United States that they would sacrifice everything over Ukraine? Is Ukraine that important for the United States?
Well, it's important for Biden administration as the laundromat, and of course, Democratic Party, most of them, most of Washington establishment is utterly Russophobic, especially being driven by neocons who, if you take the Jewish part of them, they all have the connections with their relatives who have been either part of the pogroms or limited in their civil rights, by Russian Empire. So these guys are on their vengeance, on the crusade. For them, it's a fanatical Russophobia, which is completely irrational. But you have to understand that there is not a single person, including in Pentagon. There's not a single American general, officer, serviceman who do understand what real serious continental warfare is, because never United States fought with the backs to their country, and they don't understand. I repeat it constantly. What it means to lose your family, lose your property, to see a catastrophe of the destruction. These people, they don't have basically a concept of that. Take any American general. How many American generals buried their families, their children, as the result of the war? How many of them, lived under the threat of their wives being raped, or, they committed atrocities against them, losing their property, losing their houses, losing none. They do not exist. They don't understand this. The only thing they know is how to beat the, basically crap out of the third-rate militaries and third-rate, countries. That's the only thing they know. They never fought knowing that their families are in danger. So they just don't have the concept of that. Russians have this thing incorporated in their culture, on their literally cultural genetic code. And that is why, how you can communicate with those people, And when you look at this, especially when you look at people like used to be chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, you look at this crop of politicians, and they don't have even remote understanding of what real war is. And again, as I already stated, General Cavoli, Supreme Commander of the NATO European Force, he said, scale, scale, scale. We never have been even studying that, how it is happening on this level. So, and now you have these people, and we know that Mark Milley is the guy who actually conceived this so-called counteroffensive, which ended up in catastrophe. So there you go. Show me any American general who fought a serious campaign against serious enemy in the last 70 years and won anything. Don't give me Norman Schwarzkopf and late Norm Schwarzkopf and late Colin Powell. They had the ideal conditions to operate their basically war in the Gulf. Other than that, is one incompetence level of incompetence after another, and it just increases as we go. And I'll be making video after that about it precisely, because it's just, I read this Washington Post narrative a few days ago. That's why I subscribe to them for the whole $1 a week, just to read this. It's astonishing. I mean, when you begin to grasp the level of incompetence and illiteracy and ignorance, is just absolutely jaw-dropping. I was reading Washington Post now. It's a long 2-part piece. My jaw was on the floor. I mean, I thought there were smarter people than that. Evidently, they are not.
You just mentioned Russophobia that is going to the moon among the elites of the United States. Is it coming from the Soviet Union era? Is after the Soviet Union, after Yeltsin, that Putin came into power and cut everything? What are the main reasons of this Russophobia?
Well, it's all the above. It's from Russian Empire and those pogroms and the hatred which they carried, which, I mean, it's understandable. But the problem is, of course, it's one thing, Russians who sustained catastrophic losses on civilians and military people from Axis forces and Nazi Germany. At some point of time, Russians in my generation, we can, just look at Germans like normal people, we knew it wasn't the generation of Nazis who basically brought so much calamity, so to speak, to Soviet Union. These guys are not like that. They have this combination of the ethnic, cultural, and religious hatred. Although many of the Nyakos, they are not really not religious. But it's all about the fact that they thought that their model should become the only model in the world. Remember this idiot of Fukuyama with the end of history? I mean, you have to be a completely nut job to write this garbage, which is sold out as the political science. So there is no such thing as political science; doesn't exist in nature. So, but the point is that when you look at this, obviously they were supposed to be the best in the world. That there is for example, like this mythology that United States defeated Hitler. It did not, but they still live with this mythology. They live in this la la land, imagining that United States was supposed to be this whole thing, the shining city on the hill, and but it is not. And now when you look at this, and when you look that Russia not only resisted, but essentially just threw the gauntlet against the combined West, and look at United States today. It's not a shining city on the hill, let me tell you. It's more like on the ground. I live here for 30 years. I'm US citizen. I have vested interest in success of the country, in country being, orderly and successful economically. Look what happened to the United States, especially in the last 15 years. The country is unrecognizable. It's completely deindustrialized, the cultural level, the crime, it's just unbelievable. And yet they continue to live in this la la land, and they have this now. They thought it was an irritant, which they thought that Russia will disintegrate. They never knew, they never learned the proper history of Russia. They never learned the proper military history. They don't teach real military history in anywhere, in West Point or whatever. They teach this mythology, about how great America was, and just how when Mr. Obama goes out and says that we are the finest fighting force in history. I mean, you know what? I can imagine people from Wehrmacht, those who survived from the Red Army, would be scratching their heads, and Greeks might have some other, words about it. But here it is. It is a complete, puncturing this bubble of American exceptionalism, and American exceptionalism as German National Socialism. National Socialism in Germany had this idea of the race, superiority, for example, and the us and the Untermensch. Well, American exceptionalism in this respect is iteration of that. It's us, we're super exceptional. The others are nobody's. Well, guess what? It's not like this at all. And so when you have the collapse of this whole idea, obviously it creates all kinds of the sanctimonious attitudes, and you cannot buy class. American elites are very uncultured, illiterate people. You look at the Washington, it's a panopticon, basically. It's a circus, because people with class and self-respect will not allow to do what they are doing. And apart from the practical matter of basically killing the country. So look at the achievements, quote unquote, of Biden administration. Some people think they do it deliberately. No, that's the tragedy of it. They really think that they're doing good things. That's how tremendously dangerous and delusional this whole thing is.
The New York Times reported that the Polish border blockade has caused problems with the delivery of military supplies. Do you think that these changes that are happening in Poland are coming from the base, coming from the public, or the elites, the government is deciding to change their policy in Ukraine?
It is primarily, I think, but of course, Anya, she knows it way more than me about that. I think so. It's primarily on the grassroots type thing, because obviously Poles have to experience firsthand their people, their farmers, their workers, their truck drivers. They have their firsthand experience with what is happening. And I don't believe that current Polish elites are fixable, so to speak. They will continue to be there. It's just the different levels of Russophobia. All of them are absolutely Russophobic. But on the grassroots level, on the level of Polish population, who has to experience all kinds of the adverse effects which Poland basically created for itself, while supporting the war in Ukraine. I think so. It's primarily grassroots. So, and Polish population in this respect knows their own country much better than anybody who sits in Warsaw, and tries to promote those policies. And at some point of time, economics gonna take its own toll. And as we can see in Poland, we see what it is. If they don't do that because they like Russians, they do that because they are Poles and they need to leave, and they could have had actually blast being cooperative with Russia, but you know what? Warsaw is Warsaw. They do what they do.
Putin just recently mentioned that the number of foreign companies operating in Russia increased by 1,500 between March and November. How do you see their policy in the aftermath of this war, when this war started? How do you see the management that occurred at the level of Putin?
Vladimir Putin himself yesterday went on record. He said, oh gosh, those sanctions helped us to develop the country even more. And just to give you, obviously Russia was preparing for this since 2010s, especially once the coup in Kiev happened in 2013 and early 2014, when essentially Nazis came to power. Do not forget that Russian economists and Russian government, headed by the brilliant Mikhail Mishustin, there is this funny thing which shows you to the degree to which Russia was prepared. Russian economic ministries and financial ministries, they were forecasting with the start of the special military operation that due to sanctions, everybody knew what kind of sanctions will go and will happen. It will shrink 10% Russian economy. Well, they were mistaken grossly. It shrank only 2%. And then after that, once the cycles, started to be turned on, especially in not only military industrial complex, we have now what we have. Industrial real economy sector in Russia grows by about 5.5% annually. And this is not just because of the military industrial complex. Overall, Russian economy will grow this year, I believe, 3%, and they also forecast now 3% again next year. So that's pretty decent. Well, pretty good, actually, comparing when you look at what is happening in Europe or United States. And this is the real economy. And in this industry-wise, Russia revived or built anew so many industries. It's really funny, So as somebody stated, if there would have been no sanctions, they should have been invented to finally, spur Russian economy into the overdrive. And now we have what we have. And you look at the industrial news, real economy news, manufacturing, processing, things of this nature. Every day, each day, some new plant is opened somewhere, some production plant, and it ranges from consumer goods to high-end technologies. Even the issue of the microchips development, and you just look at this like, yeah, sanctions helped big time. So
OPEC Plus decided to reduce its production. Does it have anything to do with these two conflicts in Ukraine and Israel?
Well, it has everything to do with conflict in Ukraine. Now, recently, this tragedy in Gaza joined, so to speak, the fray. But a point is, OPEC Plus will continue to cut production if need be to basically get prices back to about $82 per barrel. Nobody is interested to, drive prices higher because obviously then the whole economy, global economy will cease. But the point is, it's just part of the process. The much more substantial thing is 2 days ago, United Arab Emirates openly stated they are done with dollar in the trading oil in US dollars. That is a shocker. And then you have now Saudi Arabia selling oil in yuans. And then, of course, very successful visit of Vladimir Putin to UAE and Saudi Arabia a 2 days ago. And when you look at this, like, yeah, sure, that United States will try to do the thing. Again, you have to understand, United States today is one trick pony. They know one thing, how to do one thing, and when this other thing doesn't work, guess what? They repeat it over and over again until basically what is happening right now, full de-dollarization of the oil trade happens, and then it's over for the United States. And they can do whatever they want. They will try to, lower their prices of oil, but it's not going to affect anything in the short, medium to long run. It's just speculations on the market, and it's up and down, up and down. The same as the basically stock market. Nobody cares what stock market is. All this economy on the stock market is fake. There's nothing real in that. It's just absolute, by bubbles. They sit there, create not money. I mean, you cannot call it even money anymore, but they create those dollars out of the thin air. Nobody cares what Dow Jones is, So that's what this all comes down to.
How do you see the situation of Ukraine? These forces, we have Mayor of Kiev, we have Zelensky, we have Zelensky, we have ultranationalist neo-Nazis. Is that possible that finally we have some sort of cooperation between Russia, Europeans who are interested in solving the situation? The United States is far away from that region.
No, I don't see it at all. And again, many people do not read, not the fine print. They usually don't read the regular print, which follows after each statement by Vladimir Putin, by Dmitry Peskov, by Patrushev, by Lavrov, that, yeah, Russia is always open for negotiations, except, and that comes there, considering realities on the ground. And, and they always repeat the same thing. But, sorry, guys, it is Ukrainian constitution which forbids explicitly any Ukrainian government to talk to Russians. And again, what are the realities on the ground? First, all 4 new, and I'm talking about not parts which are still controlled by Ukraine. It's not for long. All 4 new areas already part of Russia, including Zaporizhzhia and Kherson Oblast. After that, what comes next? Well, Russians are the ones who are changing these realities on the ground. And the Russians will not talk to Zelensky. They know Zelensky cannot talk to it. Zaluzhny is the same, basically, type person. It's just another attempt for the United States to somehow talk down, to manipulate with this conflict. Talking about the inside Kiev and inside all those forces. It's just one purpose for this whole thing. It's to talk down on catastrophic defeat, which they already sustained, because they understand the consequences of this are gigantic. And we are talking about it already. It's one in millennium event. We have the whole Western civilization basically, imploding on itself. And part of one of the major drivers behind it is, of course, conflict in Ukraine, which exposed the West as the hollow force and basically people who lost any kind of the high moral ground for the rest of the world. And they need to now to control the narrative. Oh, let's put Zaluzhny, let's play this democracy. There is no democracy there. There are a bunch of the either genocidal clowns like Zelensky or Nazis. Mr. Zaluzhny is a Nazi, and they try to play this, kabuki theater, which makes no difference whatsoever. The only discussion the Russia will have is the one which they will bring to the table, the items of the unconditional surrender and what Ukraine has to become, if it will exist still after that. And that most likely will be that Nikolaev and Odessa will be taken. And then the rest of it, whatever is going to be left around Kiev, it will be primarily agricultural country with police force, no armed forces, and it will be controlled from Moscow primarily. So this is how it's going to happen in the best case scenario for Ukraine. Other than that, I mean, who knows? It's difficult to forecast, but it makes no difference whatsoever. Everything what is happening right in Kiev, it is all a cover-up action for their basically people. Well, people are not stupid around the world. In fact, is they are much more intelligent than West gives them the credit for, and they see the catastrophic defeat of the NATO, and that means what? NATO is done.
It seems that Finland intends to open a checkpoint on the border with Russia on December 14th. Does it have anything to do with their economy?
Oh, it has everything to do with the economy. So, listen, it's generally speaking, Finns never liked Russians, and hey, it's fine, they are free to do and feel whatever they want. But many people still do not understand that once they got into NATO, it is Russia which now decides that, okay, let's crush this industry, let's crush that industry. Oh, you want to close checkpoints? Fine. No more lumber or timber, rather, because the timber industry and lumber industry in Finland subsisted on a large portion of Russian timber. Now there will be no Russian timber, only lumber if they want to import, lumber being the already processed timber. And this is just the part of it. Russians own a number of the very large shipbuilding wharves in Finland. So, Russia can do a lot of things to Finland, and she already started doing it. And of course, then suddenly your border exchanges, which were very large, hugely important for local Finnish economy, they are gone. I can tell you one thing. We were going to Russia this August, okay, just recently. And when you go through Tarfyanikova, and this is one of the major checkpoints between, you drive from Helsinki on the bus to St. Petersburg, you pass by when you go on the Finnish side of the border, and you see all those large malls, large shopping centers, cafes, restaurants, other type of stores, all closed already, already in August. When you look at this was a huge commerce cluster in itself, just around this checkpoint. It's gone now. Everything stands closed, So who won? Well, I can tell who won from that. Well, I can tell you one thing: Finns shot themselves into the foot. They used to have the stream of Russian, tourists, and then of course Finns were going over the border to fill the tanks of their cars. Go shopping St. Petersburg, which is still cheaper in this respect for the old brands, and and again, the glitz of St. Petersburg. While Helsinki is a lovely city, Helsinki is not even in the same league. Okay, it's just not even funny to compare. But here is the point. What did they do to themselves? They elected this bimbo, whatever her name, drug addict, and now she's the prime minister, and they are killing their own economy. They became the members of NATO. Well, they have now their future, which is being formed as we speak, Leningrad military district, which will be, of course, all along the border. And Finland, if anything bad happens, they will be gone really fast. So that's suicidal. But Europeans are suicidal. Their elites are degenerate. They are illiterate. They are badly educated. And, you have Annalena Baerbock. I mean, she has issues with geography and geometry. Same goes for pretty much any politician in Germany. So, yeah, that's what we have. It's a circus.
when we talk about Finland, it's so amazing. This is the country that survived the Cold War. And right now, all of a sudden, they are fearing Russians that go over and they want to take Finland. Do you think that this membership of NATO coming from the political party in Finland, or they following the United States order?
Both. Again, there is no, while there are many nice, wonderful people in Finland, generally Finns do not like Russians. Okay. So generally, I mean, doesn't mean that if you go somewhere they will discriminate against you. No, many people are nice and very many decent people, lovely people, in fact. But the point is, yeah, they thought that it was a good idea. They were basically pushed towards that. And of course, that means what? They completely forgot those 70 years of the, what it was called the policy of the Paasikivi Kekkonen, Urho Kaleva Kekkonen, the president of Finland, which was absolutely crucial in developing very good relations between Soviet Union. He was friend of Brezhnev. So, and it looked like Finland was really good neighbor, the very good cooperation, extremely good commerce, mutually beneficial and all that, not to speak about Finns, having those alcoholic trips to Leningrad and St. Petersburg. So it's all gone now. They wanted it. Russians didn't want that, but they wanted it, so it's gone. No more St. Petersburg or Vyborg for them. Well, they can enjoy their nationalism and chauvinism while their industries are dying out. So they wanted it again.
You remember when this war in Ukraine started, after that charge of International Criminal Court, they thought Putin is isolated. He cannot get out of Russia. And you see right now how everything, the rhetoric is changing right now. What are the areas of interest between Russia and the Arab states?
Well, we shouldn't, of course, forget the oil and energy. It's huge. It's a very important part, and we know what is happening in terms of, as I already stated, United Arab Emirates saying, well, you know what, bye dollar, we're not doing this anymore. So Saudi Arabia already well on the way, and way on the way to BRICS. The BRICS is will continue to emerge as supplant, if you wish, of the present United Nations, which is utterly corrupt organization and utterly corrupt institutions by the West, like International Olympic Movement and things of this nature. Obviously, you cannot isolate Russia; you just can't. But in terms of Arabs, obviously, conflict with Israel, and you have to remember also that Russia is a harmonizer there, which we already see, that suddenly we have Saudi Arabia and Iran talking to each other. And not only talking, they're talking, very closely, constantly. They are beginning to cooperate. So basically, this is a huge part of it. Secondly, finding the diplomatic solution, whatever the solution might be. Some people say it's two-state solution. Others say it's Israel could be completely gone, which also might happen. I don't know, but I'm not specialist in the region, especially in the Middle East, that part of the world. But then there is another thing. Obviously, they have a lot of money, and they do not want to fight the war. Nobody does, actually. How you do not fight the war? In any kind of the conflict, you do the diplomacy. As an example, what happened between, for example, Iran and Saudi Arabia, you join very serious organization economically, which is economically monster. I'm talking about BRICS. And then you begin to build all those wonderful things like North-South corridor through Russia, Azerbaijan, and Iran towards the Indian Ocean. And then you have to go to technology and you buy the good weapons. And what are the good weapons? Well, you already saw how Russian weapons performed. First in Syria, now in Ukraine, against best what the West and NATO could throw at Russia. And everybody knows who has won. And as a result of this, plus you have the issue of really good nuclear power stations, Egypt, nuclear power stations. You have the other infrastructure projects, which, when you look at Saudis now, they really want to become literally tourist mecca. They view themselves as the tourist destination, not that kind of the Hajj tourism. When you have Muslims, you go to those, important mosques, especially, and you do the Hajj. No, we're talking about they want to see obviously people of all kinds of, religious affiliations, and who knows, maybe they will succeed. They have money, but they need obviously people who are also very good in terms of infrastructure and advanced technology, and Russia can offer a lot, and so is China, of course. So, and that's what it is. BRICS it is. Well, you should know, for example, that Russia and Iran, they have visa-free travel. So if you're in Iran, you want to go to Moscow, you just get on the plane and just fly. So Iran obviously is extremely important. Always was. Not just location, not just their oil or other energy resources, but of course they're pretty smart people, Iranians. So they and you want that type of people and communications with them, especially considering the fact that mostly Russian versions of Islam, those Hanafi actually madhabs, they are fairly liberal in many respects. Yeah. For example, I'm not talking about, for example, Chechens. Ahmad Kadyrov, or Ramzan Kadyrov, pardon me. Ramzan Kadyrov was with Vladimir Putin in Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. Of course, it is important. Large portions like Tatars or Bashkirs, let alone on Caucasus, are Russian Muslims. So it is a cultural thread, so to speak, which ties this together. And then, of course, again, Russia is interested in the peaceful coexistence. It doesn't mean that you will, just accept everything unquestionably. No, doesn't work like this. But generally speaking, Russia that's part of their reason why they have such a, absolutely fanatical Russophobia in Washington. Russia promotes around the world what would amount to conservative values, and it resonates with the 85% of the globe. That is why they are afraid of Russia that much, because Russia offers the alternative ideological and, well, metaphysical view, which is actually a traditional view. Of course, it is being modified for, accounted for the realities of the 21st century, but it's conservative view. It is, traditional family values, it's traditional sexual values, if you wish, it's traditional approach to their bringing up children. And so when you look at this, of course, the world likes it. Of course, and especially Muslim Ummah, so to speak, what is the generally Islamic world. So, and then when you have suddenly this level of cooperation between Russia and Saudi Arabia, or UAE and Iran, it obviously creates this immense positive vibe throughout Muslim world. And it also opens a very interesting way for their development and evolution, and then who knows where it will bring. It can bring many positive things and many positive changes.
It seems that Zelensky has canceled a planned speech before the US Senate. How do you see Zelensky right now, and that Zelensky that was comparable to Churchill?
Sir Winston had many, many flaws, okay? He was a rabid British imperialist. He was the man who wouldn't mind some dirty actions and some, obviously, how to put it, dark dealings on the side. But he was definitely a man of the tremendous talents. And he was an alcoholic. And Stalin supported this alcoholism in a good manner by sending him his favorite bottles of Armenian cognac constantly. And when Churchill was coming to Moscow, he was always living with the, solid amount of cognac. But the guy was definitely a very talented politician. He was very talented writer, although he falsified history on many occasions. But then again, you have to be able to falsify it. He ended up having Nobel Prize for literature, no less. He was excellent mason. He did excellent masonry. Winston Churchill loved not only to write, or he loved to put the bricks together, and he was pretty good at it, evidently. So, how to put it politely, this is ridiculous. I mean, okay, the guy who was a very large historic figure, and who, in the end, you can applaud Churchill for his understanding of the nature of the World War II. And no matter how he hated Soviet Union and communists, and he found the power of the character in him to understand that Soviet Union was an ally. That was a strategic historical decision, obviously. And hey, let's not we have to give him credit where the credit is due. Throughout 1940, England did stand alone against the whole might of the Axis forces. They did. That is why they were actually, basically made the sigh of relief when Hitler invaded the Soviet Union on the 22nd of June 1941. But again, there is a titan, okay, on one side, and there is a clown on the other who played the piano with his penis, okay? So, I mean, how can you even compare these two people? Churchill was an enemy, but he was an enemy of scale, okay? This guy is the garbage, human garbage, and he is a drug addict. Anybody who compares this, but then again, listen, American Academy, most of it is pathetic. I mean, these are people who are downright stupid, and they cannot write the proper history. They just do the whiteboard theories which have no relations to the reality. And that is why, especially when you look at what is American journalist, it's a moron. It's a moron who has no principles, who doesn't have, most of them, they don't have the understanding of the right and wrong. So they are basically cheap propagandists. All of them, top bottom. Take the editorial stuff on New York Times or CNN. Those people are vile people, they are just, they're nobodies. And then that's why you get this comparison, which is incomparable.
Just before wrapping up, I want to ask another question about Henry Kissinger. How do you see his character?
He was very much in self-promotion, okay? He, as many American politicians, he was a part and parcel, so to speak, of the whole system. It was about self-promoting constantly. For example, it wasn't Kissinger really; it was Nixon who did the maneuver with China. So people forget that he was under the guy who was even larger political figure than him. And after that, he just continued to capitalize on this myth or scaffolding of this, the elder of the foreign policy. Most of what he wrote in the last 20 years, it's just platitudes. It's just, run-of-the-mill, things which anybody with IQ above room temperature could have concluded. So his time passed a long time ago. And when he gone, how can I say it? Just let him rest in peace. Or some people say, let him rest in hell. And he has a lot of blood on his hands, no doubt about it. And of course, he never was a realist, as many people try to present him. He never was a realist. He was always a neocon in many respects. And fact is, many people do not know this. But in 1970s, Mr. Kissinger was already offering his advice to, powers that be, that Soviet Union is about to basically capture the whole world, and we're done. We need to prepare to depart. But guess what? He had the communications at that time at the Chief Naval Operations, Admiral Elmo Zumwalt, who wanted to run for Congress on the Democratic ticket. And Elmo Zumwalt said to him, no, we still have some steam left in us, in the United States. Guess what? Guess who was right? Granted that Gorbachev and those people who came with him were as such morons as the present Washington. They were about equivalent of the basically ignoramuses, which kind of ran the country into the ground completely. So, but that's the point. Kissinger, nobody talks about this mistake, and it was a huge mistake of the historic proportion. So, there you go.